Hello friends, AmyR here with Prairie Paper and Ink with another somewhat Valentine, but not specifically Valentine card. Anywho, starting off, as I have been lately, with some Canson XL watercolor paper. This time I decided to pull out my Distress Oxide sprays. Haven't used these in a while. And just, I had a rough idea in my head. I wanted just a soft background. And I was just kind of playing. I honestly had no idea where this was going to go. Just playing. Like I keep telling everyone to do. Just play. Create backgrounds and see where it goes. Honestly, when I was at, kind of at this point, I was like, oh, I don't even know if I like this. But I just kept going with it. So with my Oxide sprays, I was using Speckled Egg and some squeezed lemonade and twisted citron and worn lipstick. I was going lighter with the other colors other than the Speckled Egg because I did want this background to be fairly light because I'm going to, add the stenciling over it, images, all the things. So I was just kind of spraying with water, moving it around, blotting up some of the excess and just kind of letting it do its thing. So I've got a little bit of color on there, but not much. And I was more than happy with that. So I kept drawing everything kind of with my heat tool. And then I used the Speckled Egg Oxide spray to add some splatter. I also added some splatter with just water because all of this, of course, is water reactive. So it just adds more. And then I'm going to add a ton of white splatter, as one does. This time I'm using my Avery Elle white ink spray. I never use the actual spray nozzle on this. I either use just the whatever you might call it thingy, unscrew it, tap that, or I pour it out and use just a brush, whatever floats your boat. So I added a bunch of white splatter, dried that again with my heat tool. Once this is completely dry, I'm going to trim this down before I add anything else to this. Because right now it's about 4.5 by 6 inches, something like that. So once it's dry, trim it down to smaller than what my card base will be. My card base will be an A2 sized card base, so 4.25 by 5.5. So I think I trimmed this down to 4 by 5.25. So once this trimmed down, I pulled out the Honeybee Stamps Delicate Doily Stencil, and as is tradition lately, crackle paste over it, of course. So I just positioned the stencil over this background and then applied the crackle paste right over it. Once I've got the crackle paste applied, I'll take my stencil and my little palette knife and I'll quickly just wash them off with water. You could set your stencil in a container of water. I've never got to that yet. I'm scared that if I have a large container of water, I will knock it over. So I just take it to the sink and immediately dry it. So I did all of that. And then I die cut all of the pieces from Simon Smooth White cardstock using Honeybee's Lovely Layers Roses wafer die set. I had a lot of people requesting that I make a video using this. I love Honeybee's Lovely Layers wafer dies. I've done several videos with the other ones they've released so far. They look, when you're just looking at the wafer dies, they look more complicated than they are, but they come together so unbelievably easy. And there's also a little infographic, but basically you literally layer largest to smallest. That's it. And if I can do it, anybody can do it. Seriously. Because I just don't have the time or the brain span most of the time to really, if I really have to think about something and really have to fiddle on that. So it's just not where I'm at. I just want it to be easy. So anyway, I die cut them all from white. You could make this simple and just die cut from color cardstock or different colors of cardstock. But I really had these, those sort of peachy, pinky, yellowy tea roses in my head because they're some of my favorites. So I used squeezed lemonade and worn lipstick distress inks with little blending brushes. And I just blended them onto all of these pieces that will make up the actual rose itself. So I'm using Post-it tape on the fingers of my left hand. So I'm not getting fingerprints all over these because, again, distress inks, very reactive with water as well as fingerprints, all that sort of thing. I'm not making my blending super perfect. These will smooth out a little bit, but also as you layer, adhere everything together, you're not going to see a lot of it anyway. So I just added those colors, let them kind of mix and do their own thing. And then for the greenery of these wafer dies, I'm going to use Twisted Citron and Mowed Lawn Distress Inks. And all my little mini Distress Inks, they're in one of the little holders by the ink stand. And I'll have a link to that, just like everything else. And I'm also working with the ink blending on my little travel glass mat by Tim Holtz. Now that I've slowly getting things kind of put together and finding some of my supplies, I can start using them again. So same thing with the greenery, like this whole die set, I die cut everything once. That's another reason I think that I love them so much is I don't even have to think with the die cutting. It's like die cut everything once, you're good to go. That makes enough for the main image. And then if you want to make more, you just die cut more pieces, but you don't have to think. It's just simple. So I ink blended on all of these pieces of the greenery, doing the same thing, adding that Twisted Citron and then going in with like the Mowed Lawn, just to give it that little extra bit, you know, of something. And then when it comes to the actual layering, like I said, it's so easy. Yeah. Again, if I can do it, anybody can do it. So I did all my little bits of blending. And then everything comes together, especially with this set. Everything just, well, with all of their sets, it just kind of comes together like a puzzle. So I just used craft tacky glue, and I wasn't even paying attention at the beginning, and I was laying them wrong. In the end, it probably wouldn't even have mattered. But I caught it quick enough so I could quickly pull the two layers apart before they fully adhered. And then I started layering it all up, but literally kind of largest to smallest. You just work from the base all the way up. I'm not even sure how many layers for this rose, but man, when it's all together, it's so pretty. So layered that all together. And then I'm going to do the same thing with the little rosebud. So there's like the little stem, and then there's the two pieces that make the actual rosebud, and then one final little leaf that you would hear right on top, and it makes this cute little rosebud. It's just adorable. So adhere that, and then the greenery all comes together. And this is where, it just kind of fits like a puzzle. Like the leaves fit in perfectly together, and then the top little portion fits in, and it just comes out. And then this like butts right up to the rose. So I found the actual easiest way to adhere these together. You don't even need to. You could just adhere them to your card. But I just put glue right along the very top of the greenery, and then just butt it up against the rose, let it dry. It was good to go. And then, of course, I'm going to add splatter to this as well. I just felt like it needed it. Everything needs splatter. But anyway, same thing. Use that white ink spray to add a bit of splatter. And then also added some strategic splatter to areas where you probably can't see it on camera, but in real life, I managed to get like a couple little like black smudges. I don't even know sometimes where I pick up things, gets on my fingers, all that stuff. So splatter was strategic in covering that because that's just what I do. So I did all of that. And then my sentiments are from the Bitty Buzzwords Be Mine stamp set and coordinating wafer die set. The wafer die, the word adore, I die cut from white cardstock, and I had stacked 3 layers together with the craft tacky glue. And then the outline I die cut from vellum and adhered that all together. And then I didn't realize I was like off screen. I stamped sentiments from that Be Mine stamp set onto white cardstock with clear embossing ink, and then I heat embossed them with white embossing powder. Once that was melted, I'm going to use that worn lipstick distress ink again with my little blending brush, and I'm going to apply that over top of those words. The heat embossed sentiments will resist the ink, so then you can actually see the words. And then I wiped off the excess and I trimmed those down with my paper trimmer. And then I'll come back to the sentiments in a minute. I also pulled out some twine from my stash. My background obviously is completely dry. That crackle paste is dry. So though I could wrap the twine around the background and then tie that in a bow. So once I've got the twine in place and the bow tied, everything's good to go. Trim off the tails, and then I can adhere that rose right on top of it. Again, using just craft tacky glue. And the whole like kind of point of this card, not just the rose, I have been wanting to use, these are the wax melts that Honeybee released. So I've got the wax melts, I have my little melting spoon. The holder is my own. A friend sent that to me forever ago. I have been hoarding like wax melting things for a really long time. I don't know what it is. I love wax seals. I now have a drawer of like all the melting things and all the fun things. But anyway, I used some of the wax melts. I had my little tea light. I melted them in a little spoon. And then I poured this right on top of that twine. And then I'm using Honeybee's rose wax stamper on that. So I press that in. It takes not very long. You can tell when it's like set because the stamper just releases from the wax really easily. So I've got that pretty little like wax seal on my card, and it just makes me happy. So once I was done with all of that, I'm going to adhere my sentiments again with craft tacky glue right along kind of the bottom of my card here so that it will say, "I truly adore you." So again, this is why I say it's kind of Valentine's, but not really, because I can send this to anyone. You know, this for me, this is also another just really heartfelt thank you card. So after I had all my sentiments adhered, I also pulled out just some bling from my stash. So I adhered a bunch of like sequins and pearls and things like that because more is more, you know. I got the sprays and the splatters and the crackle and the wax. Like this to me is like full on like mixed media at its fullest. So once I got everything adhered with the craft tacky glue, I'm going to set that aside to let all of the like sequins adhere into place. And then for my card base itself, on the inside of the card, I'm going to use that delicate Doily stencil again, this time with Speckled Egg Distress ink. So I just held that in place and blended the ink over the stencil onto the inside of the card. So I've got that just pretty pattern going. So once I had that blended, I'm going to put my card base into my Misty, and I'm going to stamp another sentiment from that Bitty Buzzwords Be Mine set. The sentiment I'm going to stamp with Worn Lipstick Distress Oxide ink, because when it comes to stamping anything, I prefer the oxides. The pigments in them give a bit of a more solid impression. So I stamped that. Normally I would leave it here, but it was just bugging me that I didn't have any like yellow in the card on the inside. I don't know. It was bugging me. So I took the same Squeeze Lemonade Distress spray that I used on the card front, or Distress Oxide spray, and took just a little bit of it and just added a little bit of splatter to the inside of the card just to finish it off. And then I paired this card with a metallic sea glass envelope, and that finished it off. So I got all kinds of things going on this card, but it was so much fun to make. Really enjoyed this. And the wax seal, just creme de la creme, you know, cherry on top. I don't know. I just had fun with it. So as always, I will have links below the video. I'll have a link to my blog post with the photos in the blog. I will have a supply list, picture link supplies in my blog as well. All that info will be directly below the video if you're interested. Thank you all so much for watching, subscribing, thumbs upping, commenting, all the good things. And I'll see you all very soon in the next video. Bye.